The world is a pretty big place. There's no way around it. The Earth we live on is massive and is loaded with almost 200 countries as recognized by the UN. In this video, I wanted to combine my three biggest interests, being theme parks and roller coasters, travel, and geography, all in one video. This is easily going to be one of the most ambitious voiceover lists ever recorded on YouTube, so for that, I have to ask for you guys to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Videos like these take loads of time to make, so the support I receive on the channel is incredibly motivating to say the least. So, to get things started, I will not be covering every single country in this video, as that would take way too long. Rather, I'll be splitting this up into multiple parts, so be sure to stay tuned as I dissect the best roller coasters in every country. Last thing I wanted to take note of is that there's a crazy long list of countries without a permanent roller coaster that I'll be showing you on screen here. Cue the music. Now that we've got those countries out of the way, let me explain the order we'll be going in. Basically, take every continent and place them in alphabetical order, minus Antarctica, who obviously don't have any roller coasters, and then take every country in that continent and put them in alphabetical order. Alright, I think I've covered everything. Without further ado, here are the best roller coasters in every country in the world. Starting things off in Africa, we've got the country of Algeria, where you can find Cyclone Coaster, a simple SBF Cyclone coaster that can be found at Farak Land Annaba Park. This is a common coaster layout that can be found all over the world, and for the sake of this video, the ride will be representing Algeria. Way down the coast of Africa is Angola, where you can find Montanha da Leba. This is a knockoff era looping coaster that is located at the Yolango Center. Some of these knockoffs look better than others, but from an outside perspective, I'm not really sure what to think of what is Angola's most extreme roller coaster to date. The nearby Botswana is actually home to a Schwarzkopf looping star called Gwazi, and no, I'm not talking about that Gwazi. It's situated at Lion Park and looks like a pretty enjoyable ride, very comparable to Silver Bullet at Frontier City here in the States. Over in Egypt, one of the most historic countries on Earth, the classic Vekoma SLC can be found at Roller Coaster Dream Park. I love how fulfilling that name sounds, but come on guys, I don't think any of us are actually dreaming about SLCs. The next door neighbor to Egypt is Libya, where their best coaster is a Wacky Worm located at the Tripoli amusement park. I mean, I guess it's impressive that they have any roller coaster, so it is what it is. Ethiopia's first ever roller coaster opened just recently in 2019. This makes sense seeing as the country is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. It is just a simple kids coaster, but a credit in Ethiopia sounds pretty fascinating to me regardless. Like Libya, Malawi is also home to a Wacky Worm as their best coaster. It can be found at Dreamland Restaurant and Park, so hey, imagine waiting for some of Africa's cuisine by riding a little roller coaster. The small island nation of Mauritius is actually home to a pretty spectacular looking alpine coaster. These are fun rides no matter where you can find them, and to think that you can ride one in Africa is so cool to me. The mountainous country of Morocco houses a small, 3-inversion Gerstlauer Eurofighter coaster. Like the Alpine coaster we just talked about, these Gerstlauer models are fun no matter where you run into them, but getting to ride one in Africa sounds pretty freaking sweet. Nigeria's best roller coaster is a simple Zamperla Jungle Mouse. Seriously, I had no idea about a lot of these. I'm learning a lot right now just by researching for this video. In Rwanda, one of the most intimidating roller coasters ever resides at Bambino Super City. And no, I'm not talking about that layout, I'm talking about the train. Look at that thing, what a disgrace. Senegal's very own Wacky Worm is their best roller coaster, so again, not the most exciting, but still interesting regardless. Alright, now onto the real deal of the roller coasters in Africa. South Africa, one of the richest countries on the continent, is home to Anaconda. This Giovanola invert looks like one of the best inverted coasters in the entire world and is a huge bucket list ride for me. Those who have gotten the chance to experience it say it's really good, and one look at its layout makes it no wonder to see why. This one definitely came as a surprise to me, but Sudan is actually home to a little Wild Mouse coaster as their best. There's no actual images of this attraction, so I'm just going to be showing other janky Wild Mouse coasters on screen which you can find in China. Down south from Sudan is Tanzania, who have a decently fun looking wild mouse on their hands. This one is different from the others we've covered so far in this video because it actually has spinning trains running along its circuit. Togo's best roller coaster is a simple kiddie coaster by some Chinese knockoff manufacturer. Yeah, so that's cool and all, but could you imagine if the country of Togo had a roller coaster by the manufacturer Togo? Just me? Okay. So here's another one that really surprised me. Tunisia is actually home to this bizarre looking spinning coaster that interacts with a giant ape monument, both of which are situated on top of a building. Pretty weird, huh? Ah yes, Africa sure does love their wacky worms, because over in Uganda, the ride model is the best coaster on the nation. The last country we'll be talking about on this continent is Zambia, who has some roller coaster that we know literally nothing about. If I had to take a guess right here, right now, it's probably yet another wacky worm. And we're on to our next country and the second and final one in this video, which is going to be Asia. In my opinion, this is the most interesting continent in the world. The countries here are all so different from one another, and the roller coasters are certainly no exception, so let's dive right in. Starting things off in Afghanistan, Free Fall, a family shuttle coaster, can be found in the country's capital of Kabul. This ride looks pretty sketchy, but it is what it is. Speaking of sketchy, not too far away we've got Armenia, who has a surprisingly similar coaster to the one we just talked about, but it honestly looks even worse. This is another family shuttle coaster, only this time with spinning teacup-esque trains. Slightly to the east of Armenia, Azerbaijan's best coaster is virtually identical to the first coaster we talked about in this video, located in Algeria. The ride is a simple Zyklon model and has the incredibly creative name of roller coaster. Coming up next is Bahrain, whose best coaster is Himalaya, a pretty enjoyable looking wild mouse coaster with spinning trains. Bangladesh, the next door neighbor to India, is home to a knockoff aero looping coaster, similar to the one we talked about earlier in Angola. Again, it's hard for me to tell if it's any good by a couple of pictures and videos, but I'd be willing to bet it's pretty dang rough. The country of Brunei has just one operating roller coaster, but much to my surprise, the ride looks like a pretty well done family ride. Just look at this thing. Cambodia's best roller coaster looks laughably bad, as it's this janky kids ride with ridiculous pieces of theming. Let's hope it rides better than it looks, but probably not. Moving over to China, we've got our first elite top 100 worthy roller coaster, though South Africa's Anaconda could be an exception depending on who you ask. This ride is known as Dinoconda at China Dinosaurs Park, and actually I don't think it's just a top 100 roller coaster, I think it's a top 10 at the bare minimum. This ride looks absolutely incredible, and it makes sense given that it's located in what very well could be the best country for roller coasters in the world. To the other end of Asia, the country of Georgia, not to be confused with the southern state in the US, is home to American Mountains. This is another one of those knockoff aero looping coasters we've been talking about, but also I will say I like how unique that color scheme is. On over to India, Hot Wheels Nitro is a cool looking B&M floorless coaster that appears to be pretty reminiscent of Batman the Dark Knight at Six Flags New England. This is definitely the country's best, though the park that it's in does actually have a pretty cool looking Premier Rides launch coaster as well. Indonesia's best roller coaster is the bizarre yet incredibly fun looking Premier Rides launch coaster known as a racing coaster. Now this isn't actually a racing coaster, but where it lacks in that aspect, it more than makes up for it in simply being a really cool ride. Iran's best roller coaster is one that we don't have any pictures of, but we do know the ride model and location of the thing. It's the IE Park Junior Corkscrew model, which judging by a similar ride by the company, it appears to be a pretty fun coaster. It's also located in Esfahan, one of the country's most prominent cities. Just across the border in Iraq, would you believe me if I told you that there was an awesome looking Mawer X-Car coaster here? These rides look so funky, but I think its location in one of the most controversial countries on earth makes it more interesting to me. Not too far away from Iraq is Israel, whose best roller coaster is Anaconda, a classic Vekoma boomerang. Some of these run better than others, but what you can't take away from these rides are that they're intense and forceful machines. Across the country, Japan's best coaster is constantly up for debate between Ejinika at Fuji-Q Highland and Hakuge in Nagashima Spaland. Don't let what I'm about to say discount how incredible Hakuge looks to be, but because of how insanely chaotic Ejinika is, I can't help but go with that one. It's very similar to China's best coaster that we already talked about, being Dinoconda, so as previously mentioned, this looks to be one of the best coasters in the entire world. Pretty far away from Japan, Jordan houses this incredibly weird-looking looping coaster at the fully enclosed Galaxy Park. This ride looks so strange, almost like a full-size K'NEX coaster. Kazakhstan's Anaconda at Fantasy World looks like a genuinely fun ride. Just look at this thing. It's nothing too special, but still pretty cool anyways. Kuwait's best roller coaster is easily Spinning Coaster, yet another family spinning wild mouse coaster. Next up on our list is Kyrgyzstan, with another knockoff aero looper. In all fairness, the setting of this thing with the incredibly green trees and mountainous backdrop makes it more attractive than the others in my opinion. On over to Lebanon, here's another Wild Mouse coaster. Like a couple others, we don't have any pictures of this one, but I'd imagine it to be a pretty janky ride judging by its model name of Might Mouse. Supersonic Odyssey is by far the best operating roller coaster in Malaysia. The ride is located in a mega mall, and just look at it, man. There's no wonder it's higher than you'd think it would be on my bucket list. I'm honestly shocked this country even has a roller coaster, but the incredibly tiny Maldives has a small kids ride located at a park called Global Amusement Park. I don't know what's so global about it, but hey, it's impressive that this country has a coaster, I have to say. Mongolia, a country sandwiched between China and Russia, is home to another knockoff looping coaster, but this one has an extra vertical loop in comparison to the others we've gone over so far. Ah yes, what are the odds? Myanmar's best coaster is also a knockoff era looper. I'm starting to run out of things to say about these things, but you're seeing it on screen so you can form your own opinion on it. To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed with this one, and it's that Nepal's best coaster is a janky powered kiddie coaster. I was expecting a little bit more out of the country, but that's okay, I'm sure it's awesome in several other ways. Perhaps the most controversial nation on planet Earth is coming up next, and of course it's North Korea. This might shock you if you haven't really done any research on this topic, but North Korea does have some legitimate roller coasters. This is mostly for the tourists and journalists coming into Pyongyang to get a brief look at the country, but of course the Koreans can enjoy the attractions as well. As for the best, there's a Zampere La Valère and a couple of Maisho looping coasters, so consider one of these to be the best. Oman's best roller coaster is the pretty common SBF family spinning coaster. These can be found all over the world, particularly in America though, and they consist of two helixes in the layout. Just up the Gulf of Oman is Iran, which we already talked about, but a bit more to the east is Pakistan. Pakistan's best coaster is easily Big Drop, this absolutely massive shuttle coaster at Sozo Water Park. This ride leaves much to be desired from the looks of it, but at the same time I actually think it looks pretty fun to ride. On over to Palestine, which debatably isn't a country, but it is recognized as one by the UN. Their best roller coaster is actually a pretty substantial quadruple or quintuple knockoff looping coaster that opened in 2018. We don't have any pictures of this, but there's identical rides in China that can give you an idea of what this might look like. To the Philippines, Star Flyer at Star City looks to be the best coaster in the entire country. To be honest, this looks surprisingly fun, and it could very well be Pinfari's best creation yet. Qatar's current best roller coaster is F1 Coaster, which is a somewhat well-themed family ride located at Gondolania theme park. To take note of though, later in 2021, a humongous premier ride shuttle coaster will open to be the country's largest coaster ever, and that ride goes by the name of Dragon Fire. By far the largest country on Earth, Russia, has a couple of contestants that make their best roller coaster up for debate. For the purpose of consideration, there's an Intamin 10 inversion coaster, two blue fire clones, a Vekoma giant inverted boomerang, and later this year an Intamin accelerator. That said, my pick for the country's best is actually Shred the Sewers at Dream Island in Moscow, the new for 2020 indoor Intamin Blitz coaster that isn't being talked about at all. I hope to cover this ride more in some future videos, but to put it short, it looks absolutely fantastic and I'd be willing to go to Moscow just for this ride. Another country whose best coaster is up for debate is Saudi Arabia. Well, sort of. When considering the currently operating ones, Surf Rider at Happyland Park looks to be the best by far. Honestly, the ride does look really fun, but the reason I say it's up for debate is because Six Flags Qiddiya will open in 2023 with many incredible looking attractions. With that being said, many are skeptical of how legit this could be, because Falcon's Flight, the world's tallest, fastest, and longest coaster yet, is supposed to be built here. Nonetheless, it's absolutely worth a mention in this video no matter what. The absolutely tiny nation of Singapore doesn't have a whole lot of roller coasters, but within their Universal Studios theme park, Battlestar Galactica easily seems to be the country's best. The ride is split up into two sides, one being an inverted track and the other being a sit-down track, so if I had to choose, the invert looks better for sure. Now for the much less controversial Korea, South Korea is where you can find T-Express, one of the world's greatest wooden roller coasters. The ride is basically a combination of El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure and Balder at Liseberg, easily making it one of my most sought after coasters on the planet. The island of Sri Lanka is home to a janky jungle mouse coaster that goes by the name of Roller Coaster. It's certainly nothing special, but it is something. Back over to the Middle East, we've got Syria, who have Mystical Hex, an inverted Alpine-esque coaster that honestly looks really boring. To be fair, I'm glad it's not a kiddie coaster, so thank you for that, Syria. Like the aforementioned Palestine, some may not consider Taiwan a country, but the UN does, so here we go. Their best coaster is between Screaming Condor, an Intamin Impulse coaster, Insane Speed, a B&M Floorless coaster, and Diving Machine G5, a B&M dive coaster. If you ask me to choose between the three right now, I really couldn't, but that's also because I haven't ridden any of them. If you're a roller coaster enthusiast who's been to Taiwan, let me know what your take on this is. Tajikistan's best coaster is this relatively large-scale family coaster that really kind of reminds me of Sea Viper at Palace Playland in Maine. When you've been seeing a lot of Wacky Worm, knockoff loopers, and wild mice, it's really nice to see some surprises like this one thrown into the mix. Over in Thailand, their best coaster is the same as Egypt's best coaster, and of course, I'm talking about the Vekoma SLC. This one does appear to be rather well maintained, so hopefully it's not too bad. What is, I believe, Turkmenistan's only roller coaster, Rolling Hills is a typical Vekoma kiddie coaster, but it's still far more impressive than some of the crappy kids rides we've been seeing on this list. Here's one that's really tough for me to decide on. The United Arab Emirates' premier theme park, arguably Ferrari World, consists two of the best roller coasters in the entire country. These are Formula Rossa, the world's fastest roller coaster, and Flying Aces, a rare Intamin winged hypercoaster. I'd also advise you guys to keep your eyes out on the new GCI Woody that's being built at Bollywood Parks, Dubai for 2021. It's said to have more airtime than any other coaster on the planet, so I'm really interested to see how it turns out. Excluding that, if I had to choose between Formula Rossa and Flying Aces right here, right now, I would probably choose Rossa. The launch on Top Thrill, Dragster, and King Dakar are so insane that I just know I've got to get on this thing at some point. Far up north from the UAE, Uzbekistan is home to a very common Vekoma boomerang model. We also saw this ride in the Israel section of the video, and like I said there, it's a nice forceful classic but nothing more. Vietnam's best coaster used to be Dragon's Run at Dragon Park, which is located near the country's capital of Hanoi. In 2020, however, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, the incredible Wrath of Zeus opened at Vin Wonders, and oh my gosh, it looks breathtaking. I don't know how likely it is that I'll ever get to ride it since it's on an island, but regardless, there's clones popping up in China, and I'm sure many other locations in the future will follow suit. Alright, the final country in the video is Yemen, whose best roller coaster actually really surprised me. I honestly wasn't expecting anything more than a kiddie coaster, but to my surprise there's a Pinfari Zyklon here. These rides have a pretty poor reputation, but it's a coaster with an inversion, so it is what it is. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been an amazing start to a pretty ambitious mini-series where I'm dissecting the best roller coaster in every country in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed part 1, and if you did, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for part 2 where we talk about Europe and Oceania, and then part 3 with North America and South America. As always, I have to say that I'd really appreciate it if you guys considered subscribing to the channel and liking the video if you found it interesting. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in part 2. Bye guys.